Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. We are doing this conversation at the Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. This is because we are attending the Yayasan Hasanah Forum in conjunction with the AVPN Global Conferences. Astro AWANI is the official broadcaster for these talks. It's going to take place from January 20th to January 22nd. There's a lot of attendees right now that is currently happening to my right. And of course, in the makeshift studio that we have right now is none other than the host herself, Dato' Shahira Ahmad Bazari, the trustee and managing director of Yayasan Hasanah. Dato', thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Let's start off with why have this conference? What would be the key impetus on having this conference right now?
Yeah, thank you. So we are here today at the AVPN Global Conference and hosting the Hasanah Forum as well. This is the 10th AVPN Global Conference and the second Hasanah Forum. So I've been quite a regular of the AVPN Global Conference over the years where they have been moving around in the region, and I've always felt that at some point we should bring this conversation to Malaysia, and I'm so glad that this year Hasanah is able to host the AVPN Global Conference in Kuala Lumpur. In this room today, I mean, there's about 1,300 people. It is a sold-out conference. What is interesting is about it being the future. It's the impact economy is the future economy, right? So what AVPN does is they bring a spectrum of players within what they call the continuum of capital, meaning you have the CSR, the philanthropic capital, the angel, the venture capitals, the impact investors, all in one room. So if we are ever going to change the world in this very troubled and unhealthy world that we live in today, I think this is the way forward, where different forms of capital should talk to each other and should collaborate and find ways in terms of how we can find solutions moving forward.
That's extremely important when we talk about capital deployment and allocation. There are a lot of actors right now, and I'm trying to understand the different kind of facets that is currently happening. We have the traditional corporates, that's always been the case, but then we have the foundations that is in conjunction, working collaboratively with the corporates, Yayasan Hasanah being with Khazanah National, and then of course you have the social enterprises, you have the NGOs, and of course you have the cooperatives. How does all these kind of actors work together in order to achieve that great social impact that we're all gunning for?
Great, so that's a great question. Actually, the AVPN Global Conference largely work with the funders, the holders of capital. Of course, we have intermediary organizations like the social enterprises and the NGOs that are actually delivering a lot of the work that we're doing on the ground. But a lot of these organizations can be argued to be quite small and they need to scale. So how do you scale organizations that are actually anchored on purpose and making some profits? Because profit is important for organizations for their sustainability. So purpose-driven organizations and how do they scale their impact is what's important. So the reason why we thought that it is quite timely for us to bring this to Malaysia is to actually expose our social enterprise ecosystem, our social impact leaders, to what is actually available out there. Quite a lot of our social impact leaders are actually more purpose-driven, obviously, than profit-driven, because then that's why they're social entrepreneurs. But actually, they need to start thinking about their own sustainability and their own growth and scale. And
you're talking about financial sustainability.
The social enterprises.
Social enterprises.
Because when they become scalable and big, then it makes people like us, the funders, want to fund them more, because then it helps us together achieve our mission of whatever it is, whether it's education equity, whether it's poverty eradication, whether it's environmental sustainability. Even, in fact, today you saw the arts and cultural shows and just doing work around cultural preservation, for example. So I think today what is important and what's important that's happening here in the KL Convention Centre in Kuala Lumpur is all of these actors sitting together in one room to actually talk about how we can scale innovation, how we can scale solutions, and how can we think about both purpose, mission, and profit together, so that, I think that's the way for the future. If you think about corporates are thinking about the ESG and sustainability responsibility, whereas on the philanthropic side, we are doing good, but we need to do more, right? Because because that's the challenge that we face today.
The key challenge, at least for me, if I'm holding capital and I want to deploy capital to actors that are currently, or parties that are currently able to affect change, I need a uniform metric of success. ROE, ROI, PBT,
Exactly.
NII, NOI. Those are the kind of things that we
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah.
So how do you then impact or measure social impact? Is it
Yeah.
social responsibility investment? Is that it?
Yeah, so that's another very good question, because impact
Thank you.
measurement is the other sort of challenge in this space.
Impact, social
So
impact,
impact measurements.
impact measurement.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we are saying, I mean, for example, I think one of the work that we are doing with Dana Impact, and I think Khazanah and Hasanah is in a beautiful space of that spectrum, because Khazanah National have their Dana Impact, which is looking at impact investing, and they also have their philanthropic arm, which is Yayasan Hasanah, who is relatively sizable in the Malaysian market to actually promote some of these things. So when you talk about impact measurements on the philanthropic side, on the E and the S, the environment and the social impact measurements, we spend a lot of time crystallizing this, because it is our business, right? We need to make sure that whatever impact measurement that we've put in place for the social outcomes or impact and environmental outcome and impacts are credible, are justifiable, and make sense.
Not just that, it must be able to be audited as well.
And audited, right? And there are a lot of best practices that are available on
Yeah.
this. So that continuum and that cross collaboration of expertise, knowledge, and skills is what will make a blended finance model something that will work for the future.
And
So
part of
we
my
can-
my
yeah.
ignorance, but is this being crystallized at some sort of an accounting standards body or something
Of
to that
course,
effect?
of course. On the impact measurement side, yes, as well as on the impact measurement and impact investment. So these are the two areas, right? So you are right, there is no standardized impact measurement frameworks. There are some that are being used, but there are no standardized impact measurement frameworks. And I think this is where philanthropic organizations who've spent all their lives, trying to crystallize impact measurement frameworks can add to their impact investing partners in terms of what is tangible outcome level measurements and impact level measurements, rather than measurements that are probably not so material,
Yes.
or measurements that are probably just ticking
Yeah.
the box, or
Yeah.
in the impact measurement world, they call it output level indicators, total number of people and
Output
reach.
level indicators.
Yeah,
that's
but so
you're not measuring impact.
you're not really
measuring
measuring, correct? Yes, so
Okay.
that's right. So I think that is why having all of these actors together in one room can build on our collective wisdom and our collective experience in making something bigger a reality.
Harkening back to what you said earlier in this interview, that you're no stranger to this kind of conferences. It's been around for quite some time, a decade actually. Has there been any tangible growth of either awareness or social impact, stakeholder engagement, to a point where you do see things improving over time, or are we still in the discussion phase right now?
No, I'm an optimist, and no, I think the ecosystem has evolved in leaps and bounds, and I think the conversations has become a lot more important and have the attention of many important people after the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because during the pandemic, you actually saw how fragile the fabric of society is.
Exactly.
How unsupported our social protection systems were. How everything can just come to a standstill. Education, for example, has come to a standstill, and that has
And-
a lot of ripple effects until today.
And the haves and the have-nots gap just widened.
Absolutely.
And the next pandemic is just around the corner.
So to answer your question, yes, I think the conversations are becoming more serious. In fact, this year, for the first time, AVPN is doing what they call the Impact Investment Day, which is tomorrow. So day 2 is Impact Investment Day, where they will bring big impact capital into the room, right? So Khazanah is here, EPF is here, but I know they have multilateral organizations, development banks. They've got the TPGs and the large private equity impact funds in the room. So I think it's a good, and for them to come to a traditionally philanthropic type conversation, to come and learn from the philanthropic sector, is, I think, a good sign. And we
No.
have a lot to learn from the investment community, and the investment community has a lot to learn from the social and philanthropic community.
So that's the point I'm trying to get at throughout our 10 minutes of conversation now, is that capital holders and philanthropic actors, they need a mediator, a person that can understand the work that they are trying to do and can talk in the same language as the capital holders understand it. Do you feel that Yayasan Hasanah is that kind of gateway for these type of parties to connect? Where does Yayasan Hasanah fit in this supply
I
chain?
think philanthropic organizations are already playing that role, because a lot of the philanthropic organization talent came from the
That world.
business and for-profit
Yeah.
world, so they speak the same lingo.
Yeah.
And they have spent a lot of time uplifting the art and science of philanthropy. Philanthropy is not just one-off charitable donation, like how we used to do before with corporate social responsibility, just to tick off
It's a good
boxes,
start, but it's not the way.
Yeah, and philanthropic capital has evolved to kind of realize their power and their potential. Because philanthropic capital is not just about making lives better, yes, that's the core, but what else can you do to change from a systemic perspective,
Yes.
rather than just
uplifting a generation,
Correct,
not
right.
just an individual.
Yeah, rather than just one-off. So definitely, I think we've got a lot to learn from each other. But I see philanthropy as the bridge, as that trust bridge, as that knowledge bridge, so that we can kind of referee both sides for the kind of what businesses should be in the future. And this should be, whether you call it responsible business, social force for good. Businesses are moving along those lines, right? They are trying to embrace sustainability and ESG requirements, and then now impact investing.
But there's a lot of greenwashing, there's a lot of lip service, there's a lot of corporates ticking the boxes of UN SDG, but are they really doing the impact that they're looking for?
Yeah, and that's why I think events like this are so important. We need to bring everybody at the same table.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot be conversing all of this in silos.
Yeah.
I can be speaking with a bunch of philanthropists in the room. We're all converted. We're all preaching to the same group.
Nobody will stand your way, put it that way.
Yeah,
But how do
we
they
are all on the
galvanize?
same page. Yeah, that's why we need to bring diverse groups to the table, so that we kind of understand each other, and we kind of learn from, this is what I can get from philanthropy. For us, this is what I can learn from impact investment. Maybe, it's the healthy tension that we talk about, right? So if the impact investors are asking us a lot more, demanding a lot more social and environmental ROI, that is good for us. Maybe we can learn more on that. We are challenging impact investors around having real measurements in terms of their commercial ROI. So I think in the time that we've been trying to moderate this, both parties have learned a lot, and definitely I think events like this are important. And I'm so delighted that Khazanah National is here in a big way. EPF representatives are here, and we brought the grantees. Actually, we always believe that conversations like this cannot continue to be amongst a certain group of people. It's a whole of society approach, right? So if you want to talk about empowering social enterprises and you don't have social enterprises as part of the conversation, that doesn't make sense, at least for us. So I think for Malaysia, we've actually brought that diverse group. And that's why we have the Impact Marketplace, where we are featuring, I think, top 20 social enterprises in the country. So they can also mingle and learn and understand what are our funders talking about. What is it that they're expecting from us? How can we up our game, right? So that's why Yayasan Hasanah brought co-hosting together with the AVPN, because I think it's a very important conversation for Malaysia.
When you look at large fund owners like EPF, for instance, or Khazanah National, they are used to understanding a business model and the life cycle of that particular business model, and they can actually factor in the kind of investments that are required and the time that is needed for those businesses to grow. Is there a required, more understanding from these large capital owners to understand how social impact needs to
yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Like an onboarding session for them, maybe.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Bringing everyone in the same room, right? We've always said social impact is long term.
Yeah.
Whereas the businesses have a fiscal year, has
It's
a calendar
like,
year,
the
right?
31st
It's 12
December,
months. And what
whatever,
are you
yeah.
going to give me in 12 months?
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It takes time. So philanthropy has been engaging with businesses to actually build that understanding, but not just the understanding, the trust, that this is the right thing to do, that you do go in for the long haul. If you really want to see improvements in the lives of people that you're impacting, in the businesses that you're engaged in the sectors that you're engaged in, it is a long haul. I mean, that's what sustainability and ESG requirements are demanding from businesses. But actually, what I'm saying is, and I had an op-ed in the Edge just last weekend about this. We are two sides of the same coin, right? If you are a business that is interested in doing good and to be a force for good, then you can lean on or lean into your philanthropic arm to make that whole story complete.
Yeah,
Instead of kind of separating it, that's a charitable arm and we're just a business entity.
Yeah.
We don't. Yeah, so it's time that, and I think the convergence is inevitable. It's already happening.
Yeah, I read that op-ed that you wrote, and one key highlight that I want to point out is that the spirit of that op-ed was talking about the mood is already there. It's just trying to
Absolutely.
seize that moment.
Yes.
Now, marrying this with what's happening around the world, we're at the advent of adoption of AI. We're at the advent of adoption of new capital. How do you feel all these various intersections are going to fit in? Do you see philanthropic arms leveraging more on technology?
Absolutely,
Is capital going to be given more now? There's a greater amount of appetite right now because there's a whole VCPE winter that is coming. So now people need to spend more to get the generations of returns that they need.
I think certainly there's a lot more capital. I do think that people are looking for a bigger bang for their buck. So how to allocate capital is something that many are looking at, because you do have other responsibilities as well. It's not just your P&L and your bottom line.
Yes.
So it's tougher now to deploy, and that is why we think that this conversation is important. And you're right, I think it is something that everybody is looking to learn. So I see everyone leaning into this. If there's a platform like this where you have different organizations coming together to actually learn from each other, I see people leaning in. I think it is a good time. And I think, like I said, post-pandemic, people knew what it was like to be deprived or to look at your fellow neighbors, humanity suffer because they, are not as fortunate as you, right?
Yeah.
Or as fortunate. So I think people are kind of stepping up, and I think that's why I think at the Hasanah Forum we've got issues around people and institutions and the role of institution.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask you about that. So how is the forum organized? You were talking about bringing various parties together. Maybe you can walk through with us into the thinking or the mentality of how you're organizing this over 3 days.
So on behalf of the Hasanah Forum, we have always positioned the forum to be able to address the tough questions, right? Elephants in the room, if you may, right? Because we are already at that moment in humanity that we all need to ask those tough questions and really kind of get our acts together. And so that's why the way Hasanah Forum is designed is we always put people in the center of everything we do. Why are we here? Is to serve and to make lives better for people. So what is the role of people and institution, people and society, and people and leadership? These are the three tracks. And in institutions, because institutions of power, whether it's government, public sector, private sector, philanthropy, what everybody has a role to play. So people and institutions is meant to discuss that, and we're very fortunate to have the Secretary General of Treasury representing government to speak about that as the largest holder of capital,
of course,
for the country. and we have other representatives from business and philanthropy. On people and society, we actually bring forth the voice of our civil society organizations because they are facing the community on a daily basis and engage in that conversation. And on that panel, we are very honored to have Puan Nurul Izzah, who is representing government, to speak about her experience on what we call learning to listen and listening to learn. So that's people and society. And then under leadership, people and leadership, and I'll be on that panel as well. And we've got a great panel. We have Tan Sri Jamila, who is a global humanitarian, who's got vast experience in this sector, and also Tan Sri Wahid, who is an icon in the corporate scene. So I'm looking forward to that, and that is really about courageous leadership. What does courageous leadership look like? I mean, if you need to move the needle in today's emergency and urgency, what do we need to do as leaders in making this difference? So that's the Hasanah Forum.
And of course, the closing statement will be given by the Prime Minister himself.
And we're very honoured that the Prime Minister has agreed.
What do you think is going to be in that speech in terms of forward-looking statements? What do you think the Prime Minister intends to espouse?
Yeah. I can't speak on behalf of the Prime Minister, but I have always felt that events and coming together of these type of events is very natural for the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has always been a strong voice of reform. He's always been a very strong voice of bottom-up. He's very close to the people. And that's why I felt that this is an opportune platform where he can inspire, because all of us are working on social reforms, you know, and what is his experience. And if you think about the concept of Madani, the concept of Madani is exactly what everyone in this room is espousing for, and they are the flag bearer of Madani because they have stand for social justice, they have stand for rights-based action.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited about this, and I hope that everyone else will be inspired as well.
Okay, final area of concern or exploration. We're not done yet, by the way. I told you we're going to do this for 3 hours. What would be some of the sectors that is interesting, that you think has highest growth of propensity to scale? Is it healthcare? Is it education?
I think couple of running themes that's going on. Definitely. I mean, you talked about AI and technology earlier. I am an optimist. I think technology can be used for good. There are two camps, but I honestly think that the potential of technology hasn't been fully explored. I mean, when we do work in community, there's actually a lot of tech solutions that we can bring to very rural areas.
Yes.
Of course, with internet access, and that's something I know this government is working on.
Yeah.
But with access, internet access, there's so much of technology solutions that can be harnessed. So I think a lot of conversations are going around technology, but obviously there are things like gender and youth. These are the two different popular topics, and really looking at philanthropy, looking at investments from a gender perspective and gender lens in terms of equity, in terms of access. Women are the most vulnerable in everything that's happening in the world, and they have got double and triple burdens that they need to carry as women. And then when they are vulnerable with the triple burden, it is actually something we need to look at. Youth and mental health, I think, is another issue that we need to look at, and YB Hanayo will be launching the pool fund for mental health well-being or mental well-being for youth, and we're looking forward to that. And I think about $1 million USD has been carved out for Malaysia for that fund, and there's actually a lot that we need to do to empower our young people about, coping with stresses in life. Yeah.
I believe that the youth are very familiar with mental health.
They are. And we actually got a lot to learn from them as well.
There's
right?
more of that rather than the other way.
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
more of that.
And also listening to them and providing them the access and the solutions and the help that they need, and
see, that's the idea. It's not just listening, it's hearing them out, because I think that their voices needs to be heard and appreciated, and their point of view is definitely crucial for us to understand as well.
Yeah. We're a big advocate of youth leadership at Yayasan Hasanah. So I totally agree. I mean, I learn a lot every time I engage with them because they really think out of the box, right? I mean, they kind of give very fresh ideas. So it's very energizing to be speaking to young people, actually.
Thank you very much. I do
Thank
consider
you.
myself as a young person, and I hope you feel energized speaking to me. That was Datuk Syahira Bazari, the trustee and managing director of Yayasan Hasanah. We are in a very noisy place here at Kuala Lumpur Convention Centre. As you can hear, there's a lot of hoo-ha happening left and right of us. Do stay tuned with us on Astro AWANI. We're going to be here for the next 3 days in order for us to cover the AVPN Global Conferences 2023 in conjunction with the Hasanah Forum. Astro AWANI is the official broadcaster for this one. Do check our website out for these kind of conversations there. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.